From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined as always with our super producer, Alexis, codenamed Doc Holiday Jackson. Most importantly, you are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. Now, as you know, folks, we do a lot of episodes for this show, and one of the things that keeps us going is that once a week, once an evening, we get to hear from the best part of the show, which is you. So in between being in our podcast minds for the crazy episodes we do, we make space to hear from the luminaries of the show, which are, to be fully transparent, not us. They are you. And recently, as we get rolling, recently we recorded a breaking news episode, an actual episode on the attempted assassination of a guy you might know from Home Alone 2. His name is Donald J. Trump. And
he knew where the lobby was, that's for sure.
He did. He had his finger on the pulse on that one. And we received something real quick that we wanted to address at the top. We got a letter from our friend we'll call Dr. J, and Dr. J said, "Hey team, big fan of the podcast, excited to hear your takes on this," meaning the attempted assassination, and said, "With love, Butler, Pennsylvania is an hour outside of Pittsburgh. I live here in Pittsburgh. I was yelling at the episode. Butler is a good 6 hours from Philadelphia. Pennsylvania is a big state. We are here in Pittsburgh too. To answer your suburb question, I'd say people in Butler will tell you it's a suburb of Pittsburgh, and people in Pittsburgh would tell you it's not a suburb of Pittsburgh," which goes to our idea of exurbs.
Well, yeah, I mean, like you know what it was? I think we did the episode like the next day. Everything was still very fresh, and I've never claimed to be particularly great at geography, but I just blurted out that it was a suburb of Philadelphia, because when I think of Pennsylvania and I think of metro areas, I think of Philly, but of course there's also Pittsburgh, and there's of course other cities in Pennsylvania too, but yeah, 6 hours away from Philadelphia, this community would be.
And with this, we have some folks traveling in the area in the near future. We've got some folks in Pennsylvania on the ground. We've got some folks heading to Ohio, and wherever we are in this wide world, we are grateful to hear from you. As we dive in, we're going to hear from a monarch, asterisk. We have not verified these bona fides. We're going to have a conversation about life in outer space. Before we do any of that, have you ever felt the ads were looking at you?
And we've returned with a message from you. Yes, you. In this case, the you in question is Charlie. And I think this is something that we've all probably thought about more and more over the past handful of years. And it is not necessarily gender specific, but let's quit beating around the bush. Let's jump right in. Charlie has this to say: listening to listener mail and you guys talking about weight loss drugs made me think of one of my recent experiences with problematic targeted advertising. I struggle with mental health issues, depression, body dysmorphia, and I recently went through a serious eating disorder. My therapist recommended journaling, and to make it easier, I have been using my phone for my daily journal entries. The content of my journal entries is raw, unfiltered emotion regarding how I feel about myself day to day, challenges I have with self-esteem, weight management ideas, etc. I noticed on my most challenging days, I'll start getting hit with advertisements on social media that have the unrealistic body standards, like AI-generated images of perfect women, underwear ads with super in shape women, things that make me feel a little worse that I'm not perfect. Within 24 hours of getting bombarded with these ads, I start getting ads for weight loss products and programs. I started to feel like it was intentionally targeting my insecurities, making me feel worse, then trying to sell me the solution. Very strong 007 villain vibes. I'll create the virus, then sell the only cure, evil laughter. So I experimented with not using my phone and journaling with actual pen and paper. And after a few weeks, my social media ads went back to random stuff based on other random things it thinks I'm interested in. I'm sure you guys have covered advertising scams, but this one experience with it I've had just really bothered me because I know how bad things have been for me. I know I'm not alone in struggling with these mental health challenges, and it has put me in some dark places and financial hardships to have my biggest issues exploited through some toxic targeted advertising designed to make me hate myself enough to drop thousands on the products that will fix me. Quotes. I'm okay. I have a solid support system, and huge thanks to my husband for trying to help me feel like a goddess, even on my worst days. Not everyone has that support at home. And when targeted advertising exploits your biggest weakness, it can become deadly. Woo! I mean, for me personally, it hits close to home. And while I know we've, for decades, talked about the unrealistic expectations the media puts out there specifically for women. And I know that is very much a thing, and is very much specifically targeted thing towards women for selling beauty products and hair products and all of this kind of stuff. And I was just doing a little Googling and trying to see if there were any recent studies about this stuff. And this article came up. Advertisers target women's insecurities from the Minnesota Daily. Research suggests ways to capitalize on women's vulnerable moments. And then I was looking through it, and it was talking about all of these 2% of women describe themselves as beautiful, only 2%. In a survey conducted by Global Polling for Strategy One, more than 65% of those same women agreed that media and advertising set an unrealistic standard of beauty. And I'm looking through this, and I'm like, gosh, this is speaking to the moment we're in right now. And I realized this was a 20-year-old article that wasn't even talking about internet targeting. So this is how it was, how bad it was when they were just hitting you where you live on TV, on the radio. Now they're reading your damn journal entries. I mean, what the it's just, I was blown away when I looked at the publication date. This was from 2013. Sorry, not 20 years ago, 10 years, a little more than 10 years ago. But just the degree to which these things have become laser focused with the precision of a scalpel. Just cutting away at your self-esteem, and I'm a dude, and I struggle with weight loss, and I have noticed of late, because of maybe certain things that I've Googled and trying to, look up certain regimens or whatever, routines, exercise, eating, whatever, I'm getting hit with all these Instagram ads for dude girdles, things to hide a beer gut and whatever, and all of these, different, name it, Ozempic, Mounjaro, whatever, now that they're becoming much more widely available through Hims and Hers, through mail order, now that it's a lot more accessible. And it cuts into me too. And I know I'm not saying that we're the same, Charlie, but I'm just saying that it is a thing that, because of how much you put out there about yourself, whether you realize it or not. I'm not journaling in my phone. I write occasional dumb song lyrics in my notepad on my iPhone, but nothing like what you're talking about. I still get served with this stuff that really makes me kind of hate myself sometimes, and it sucks, and it's so incredibly manipulative and insidious. And I think definitely don't journal in your phone ever. I would say relegate that stuff to a pen and paper and pad that you can lock away. Don't even read it out loud next to your phone. I'm sorry, guys. I'm anxious about your thoughts, because I know we've talked about, is it paranoia to think that if we say something and the phone hears us, all of a sudden it knows? I don't know.
Well, yeah. Let me step back a second. And Noel, thank you for sharing your experience with all of us. One that I imagine, most importantly, will be common to many of our fellow conspiracy realists listening to tonight's listener mail program. Charlie, most importantly, I want to thank you for your time writing in here. First off, social media and the advertising game overall will attempt to gaslight you, and those endeavors are somewhat successful. To the question that Noel raised here, the targeting works, but in perhaps a couple different ways from what is commonly perceived or believed in the public sphere. The idea is more insidious than your phone's microphone hearing you. The idea is the following. If you are on a Wi-Fi network, right, at a friend's house, it will conceivably, possibly change the tenor of the ads you receive because there is access to the activity on that specific IP, right? There's activity on that specific Wi-Fi node. And you will also perhaps notice the algorithms here are incredibly imperfect, but there's not a lot of what I would say supportive advertising. There's not a lot of attaboy. There's not a lot of, hey, you're doing a great job. There is a lot of, hey, here is a problem with you and we would like your money. This is unfortunately the predatory nature of advertising far before the advent of internet connections.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I was so blown away that article was from 2013. Of course, there's plenty of internet connections, but just the ad targeting tech wasn't where it is today. And weirdly, the article didn't really even mention internet targeting. It was more talking about times of day that women are more likely to be thinking about their appearance. That's when things will air. They will like target those blocks of time. And just to think that as recently as 10 years ago, the idea of when are things broadcasting, which now just seems so quaint because it seems so much more personalized, individualistically targeted rather than, to you and your viewing experience. It's not going to be the same as somebody else's.
I will note, one thing that advertising is very good at is centering other people, right? You'll very, unless there is a PR disaster, you'll very rarely get Nike saying, let's talk about us. Or let's talk about Sticker Mule. I don't know if you guys saw this. Sticker Mule has put out a very tone deaf thing about in the wake of the assassination attempt on Trump. They want to also maybe sell some stickers and merch based on this. The thing about capitalism is the system that has so far most effectively weaponized the ability of turning insecurity against the observer or the participant. Capitalism is the thing that hears a t-shirt or learns about a t-shirt that says, screw capitalism, and then figures out how to better sell that t-shirt, right? And the targeting advertising is, I guess there are a few, Charlie, I guess there are a few legislative loose guide rails, but they're written with advertising interest right behind them, there's not a concerted effort, at least in the United States, to protect vulnerable populations from being targeted in this way. And I'm really glad you shared this, Noel, because it shows us just how much activity online is being monitored and weaponized against other people. And, not to sound conspiratorial nor paranoid, perhaps a bit too late for me to say that, you should keep pen and paper on these things. I thought your note about writing in notes on an internet connected phone was fascinating.
Guys, doesn't it suck that we live in a system, we allow this system to break us each down individually, right? It breaks us down on purpose to sell some stuff. It really does. And I don't want to get too personal about it, but I think about watching ads. Just back when I would watch TV shows that had a bunch of ads in them, or if I was on YouTube and I was getting served a bunch of ads, or if I'm scrolling Instagram and, the loud message is your penis doesn't work, bro. Sorry, I know that's crass, but like that's literally like it's really interesting.
It's a good breaking down of it. I mean, and it's something we talked about. Like, well, the American dream was a sales pitch from the start. So the idea of deficiency, everything's aspirational. You're never good enough until you have this. You can't ever be the best you can be unless you get this, and this.
Fascinating.
But what does that do to us overall, right? I mean,
it's not good.
Each individual person being completely broken down. I think about our conversations about cults. I think about our conversations, about choosing to have the symbolic thing like a monetary system. And like, there is one thing that can help you, and it is this. And that one thing is the same thing that we are getting you to use to buy all of our stuff that we're breaking you down for.
Right. Like I get a lot of ads for subscription blood plans, which just seems untenable,
From young people in the California area. They're like, we will give you our blood.
Your blood boy. No, I don't know about that.
Wait, what does that mean?
Yeah,
I don't know what you mean.
I don't either.
Oh, the vampire.
All right.
I see you. I'm sorry.
We're moving on. But the idea of targeting ads as well, like there are loose legislative guide rails for how old someone, a human must be to interact online, right? What is it? Like the cutoff is for some social media platforms, it's like one must be 13 or older or something like that. But I seem to recall that there were restrictions that, in theory, would prevent a young human child from, say, getting an Instagram account or a TikTok account at the age of 9 years old, or something like that. Is that correct, or was there any sand to that?
I certainly feel like it's something that should be considered, and for me, that rabbit is already out of the hole. Is that a thing? Badger's already out of the bag. The father of a 15-year-old who's very connected, internet speaking, but they have learned to self-monitor, I think, to a degree, and you get to a certain point where I think the kids are more all right than we may think, but I do think there is something to be said about not shoving the iPad right in front of them when they're like 5 years old, just as like a babysitter, because then it becomes almost more of a parent than you, and has more influence than you if you're not careful. And I just want to add, Matt, I think your point is excellent and perfectly rendered. What I think these advertising tactics do is fill us up with holes inside that we can never truly fill. And that's what causes things like addiction. That's what causes things like dangerous behavior, like thrill-seeking kind of behavior, risk-taking. It's because we are shot full of holes by these types of campaigns. It's dangerous.
Yeah, I saw a clip. It was just one of these random Instagram reels, but it was a clip from a documentary on food additives, and specifically people whose job it is to create the flavor of a lemon, right?
Interesting. Flavor science, yeah.
Yes. And there was a group of these people who were flavor scientists, and they're standing out in what appears to be an orchard or a vineyard or something like that. I'm vaguely recalling it. And the person's interviewing them and just asking, well, so what are you really looking for when you are going to create a flavor? And one of the experts says, the absolute best thing that you're looking for is a burst of flavor that doesn't have a lasting effect. It's very quickly. It hits very quickly.
It hits your brain. It's like a dopamine hit.
Well, but then the secondary, another expert chimes in, and he says the quiet part out loud. He says, yes, you want a short tail on it so that you go back for another one.
Chase the dragon. And
the interviewee says, oh, so you're saying you want it to be addictive. That sounds like you want it to be addictive. And the man who said, yeah, you don't want the long tail, he says, yes, actually, absolutely. Addictive is a great word for it. And the first person who spoke, who was talking about it in bursts. Whoa. They said, we want it to be craveable. Yeah. We want it to be,
bingeable.
Everybody, please check out wrote a ridiculous history episode on the history of artificial flavors, rare flavoring, which may be worth the time. We solved the banana conundrum, and the fruit stripe thing is very much on purpose. Also, juicy fruit is whiskey based. Just so everybody knows. Yeah.
It's chemical based for damn sure. It's a weird one, but definitely check it out. But I think you're spot on, Ben. And all of this advertising stuff is a kind of a function of that. You're identifying a lack, and then you're offering a solution, but it's not really a solution. It's a temporary solution you got to buy more of, and it only makes you feel good for a little bit. And then there's a new thing that promises better results. And it's that chasing the dragon that you're talking about, Ben. And I just want to say last thing, and then we'll move on to break in another at least listener mail. I was looking on Reddit about this topic, about, manipulative advertising, about, capitalizing on insecurities. And on a post about this, someone chimed in saying, my wife grew up in rural Vermont where they didn't have TV, internet, or anything. And I swear that woman has zero sense of self-loathing, and it's awesome. So
that's incredible.
It's just the same with that story about the tribal folks that are now having all these trouble because they got the internet. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm just saying, it's a tool, but it's like fire. It can warm your bones, but it can also burn your house down. So let's take a quick break. We'll come back.
And we've returned, and we're jumping to the phone lines to hear from King John. Now, word to the wise, this is two different voicemails that are smashed together into one. It's fairly long. Stick with it. Take notes, perhaps, as we are going to, and then we will return shortly. Here's King John.
Hey, guys. This is King John. I got something that I know they don't want you to know. You go to the doctors and have a conversation with your doctor about a prescribed healthcare plan that includes a very strict and very detailed diet alongside of a detailed and regimented exercise plan. If they write that down on the prescription tag, your insurance company would then become responsible for that treatment, which in this situation would include kale and your $20 a month gym membership. The IRS has made this legal, like this is a completely legal thing. And for like all these years, they've been screaming, you can do whatever you want, you can do whatever you want. And all that people have ever done is just take pills and shots. So your doctor, if you write that plan, the insurance company has to provide that care. Now all of a sudden your grocery bill just got paid for. What you need to look up is IRS Publication 502. And it tells you right out of the gate, you can learn about what medical expenses actually are. If you just keep scrolling down, you can see it actually says weight loss program. You click on that and you start reading just barely. The first thing that pops at the eye is number one, you can include the cost of special food in medical expenses only if, one, the food doesn't satisfy normal nutritional meals, the food elevates or treats the illness, or three, the need for the food is substantiated by a physician. So again, the stuff they don't want you to know is that your insurance premiums can be paying for healthy food choices. They could be paying for your gym membership. The point is, go in there, say, hey, bro, I want to eat kale. I don't want to eat chips. Help me write a detailed dietary plan. Tell me I need to go to the gym 3 times a week for 30 minutes a day. Tell me I need to spend 5 of those minutes a day on the treadmill, right? Write it down. And then you can start using hundreds of millions of dollars that are sitting there in accounts for these kind of expenses. But either way, I'm done calling you guys. You guys enjoy it. I love what you do. Thank you. Goodbye.
Oh, wow, King John. Thank you so much for that information. Guys, this is very eye-opening for me personally. I had no idea that this even was a thing until King John said this into our voicemail system. And I've gone down just a minor rabbit hole thus far, but I've definitely looked at that specific publication 502 that IRS.gov has on its website. It's the 2023 version that exists. You can find right now. And on page 14, guys, it says exactly what King John said, that you can get basically through a prescription for food and exercise via a doctor. You can get your insurance company to pay for all that stuff.
So long as one has the wherewithal to push against them if they attempt to reject it.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, also, I real quick, King John, thank you. You're my new favorite monarch.
Hey, we generally don't like those around here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, not to make it about me, but that stance is pretty clear. King John for monarch, yeah.
It's interesting, though, how, like, obscured it is, though, because just this document, like, a lot of the stuff that you're talking about is almost hiding in plain sight. Like, you know, there is a section here about what medical expenses are includable, and there is a whole section where it says meals at a hospital are covered, but meals not part of inpatient treatment are not covered. So you literally have to, like, get a medical practitioner to, you have to get diagnosed usually with something to get insurance to cover it in the first place.
Yeah.
Like even mental health care.
Well, that's what John's saying. King John, excuse me, is saying, you know, essentially a doctor's note, which insurance will respond to. Is that correct, Matt? You're doing a hand.
Yeah, you're correct. It's just, this is an IRS document, right? Which means, as you were saying, Ben, you got to find, you know, some insurance company that is cool with the way this is worded and wouldn't want to battle the words specifically in a court of law, because
or legal representation to keep them honest.
Probably arbitration is how it would be. But it says you can't include the cost of diet food or beverages in medical expenses because the diet food and beverages substitute what is normally consumed to satisfy nutritional needs. And King John said this part, you can include the cost of special food in medical expenses only if, and then it lists three things, and it doesn't say or, it says and, which is very important. So the food doesn't satisfy normal nutritional needs, the food alleviates or treats an illness, and the need for the food is substantiated by a physician. That and is one of those things that I bet you could argue all day in court.
That and's doing a lot of work, right? Because it's not an and or.
Nope.
It's an
not
in
at all.
addition to.
Exactly. But just hearing this from somebody who, King John, you speak very confidently about this in a way that you know your stuff. I'd love to, if you want to call back in and just give us just how you know this even.
Or write it out for us in an email.
That would be great. An email would be great. That would be really, really great. But there is something to this because Business Insider's talking about it. NPR has been talking about it for a while. They are saying that you can get a prescription for healthy foods for like a basically stuff that comes from a local farmer's market from your doctor.
You know what I love about this, Matt, and what I love about this, King John? There's something that calls out to the activist in me, the idea of food security, right? Which, by the way, low key, it doesn't make it to the news often, but low key, food security is national security, which is why the European Union has all those crazy subsidies to make sure you can still grow food in the European Union. So the idea of combating food deserts this way is tremendous, and would be, how amazing would it be were there a positive, just to finish this part, how amazing would it be were there a positive conspiracy to empower people to fight against food deserts?
I mean, I just remember when I was a lot younger and was a young parent, you know, and not established in a career and still kind of finishing college, and it was unexpected. We were on government food assistance for a little while.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, that's not, I'm saying it was how we did it for a time. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. But what I'm saying is in Georgia, or maybe it was specific to Athens, because Athens is kind of a bit of a progressive little bubble in many ways. You could take your WIC points or whatever it was and get double their value at the Athens farmers market, which was a weekly fresh fruits and vegetables and meats, different vendors from around the state. You get 2 for 1 for your dollar, basically. And I think that was a really good program to encourage eating better, eating whole foods and fruits and vegetables and things like that. And I just wonder if there's anything like that, going on anymore.
Yes, it does appear that there are several programs. There's one that the Business Insider is talking about specifically they're calling it low-income neighborhoods in 12 different states, including California, Texas, Florida, New York, and Minnesota, where they had patients. There were patients in all those states who had higher risk for cardiovascular problems, and they were basically provided classes and then a fairly small amount of monthly money to specifically buy produce, fruits, and vegetables. And this is a study that was done basically to see if the fruits and vegetables actually played a role in those places that have food insecurity, right? Where if you are using a program like WIC or you are not using a program like WIC, what are the food choices, right? And then how does that change somebody's overall health? It is a little weird. They found that the changes in diet that were provided by this program were only about half as effective as the primary medicines that would be prescribed for somebody who is at risk for cardiovascular disease or something like that. But still, that's not too shabby.
Not at all.
And it's not exactly related to what we're talking about here, but it's something close.
I would argue with great respect to interject here that they are related in that they are preventative medicine. Mm-hmm. Nutrition is preventative medicine at its core. Not to quote Stickman too often, but Stick, if you're listening, big fans, let your food be your medicine, is right on that respect. And the argument is here that it is simple to empower people with access to preventative medicine, phrased as both healthy food and phrased as what you're describing there, Matt, like the preventative, medications that are required to be prescribed by a doctor. Now, will future historians look back and say it's an unnecessary series of hoops for someone to have to jump through just to get some food that doesn't hurt them later? Perhaps. But we'll have to wait until we're in the future to say that. What I really appreciate about King John, your message here, is that you are, by sending us this, and Matt, thank you for sharing this, we are empowering everybody listening. We know it's a slog. Private insurance often tries to kill people with paperwork. And I would argue that is not hyperbole.
Not at all.
Well, it's helped us learn about things like Project Open Hand, which is something I had never heard of before. Apparently, there's one in Atlanta, guys. You can go to openhandatlanta.org to learn about this. But they are providing what is essentially, or what they're calling, food as medicine. So like specifically prepared foods to help people with certain maladies, whatever they're going through. It seems really interesting. You can... I don't know, you can argue the science behind nutrition as the most important thing and to be used as a medicine, or herbs or all that other stuff. But it does seem like there is efficacy here when it comes to getting certain nutrition for certain maladies, right? Certain vitamins and minerals that will play a part in, let's say, preventing heart disease, or at least pushing it back. It's really interesting stuff. I want to learn more about them. I don't know enough yet as of this moment because I just found their website, but it's very, very cool. Oh, and guys, I think we have time for one more quick message. Our good pal Brock Ness sent us a quick message, and it's just for us, I think. But let's go ahead and hear it.
Gods, I can't believe the nerve. Here I am listening to this podcast, trying to forget about how I'm going to die. And then you remind me that everything I do is because I'm trying to distract myself from the fact that I'm going to die. What gives? I would like to speak to the manager. By the way, this is the Brock Ness Monster, and I'm totally kidding. Have a great day. Bye.
There you go. I remember that conversation.
True.
All right. While we take this quick break, we'll send the manager your way, Brock Ness Monster. Okay, we'll be right back.
And we have returned, Brock. Always good to hear from you. Thanatology. That's the fancy word for the study of death. The book that we reference there is The Denial of Death. That is the theory proposed. Shout out to our pal, Josh Clark, who is out Egypt way now, as you hear this. Or, well, maybe back. But let me save you some time and say that the thesis of that is exactly as put in the earlier conversation. The concept being that people generally do things that are recreational beyond reproductive or survival needs entirely to distract themselves from mortality. Speaking of segues, here is a response we got from a good friend of ours out in the Netherlands, talking about a situation that fascinates a lot of us here on the show, and hopefully you as well, folks. Most importantly, our buddy Luke writes in regarding the concept of these mandatory speed limiters, which is a real thing. Let's just give you the long and short of it. Luke says, "Hi guys, just wanted to point out some corrections in your most recent Strange News program. First, geography. You may have mixed up Ireland and Scotland. You mentioned that the new regulations regarding speed limits would be active if you just drive north enough from London. That is not the case. The island of Great Britain, which encompasses England, Wales, and Scotland, would not be affected because the UK is no longer part of the EU." Pausing here for a second, because Matt, I think we talked through that a little bit.
That might have been my bad. Maybe I said you drive north. I just so everybody is aware, Ireland is a whole separate thing from the UK.
Well, part of it.
Well, yes. But if you're looking at it on a map, it is like a whole separate island, essentially.
Yes. Yeah. Geographically. Yes.
Yes.
The
You cannot
geography
drive there unless you drive onto a boat, and then that boat drives across the water.
And does that count as driving?
Yeah, of course it
Is a hot
does.
dog a sandwich? What about a quesadilla? So that's a great point. So Luke continues, therefore, if you drive just north from London, you will not encounter cars that have the new speed limit regulations. It will only be active in the European Union. This includes, to our earlier point, the Republic of Ireland, because it is an EU member, as well as Northern Ireland, which is not in the EU, but has to comply with many EU regulations because, to your note, Matt, it is on the same island.
Yeah.
It's like, it's going to look so funny in the future when we say, yeah, it's the same island, but not really. It's like Cyprus all over again, hopefully with less bloody fallout. So Luke says the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, they share their customs area. They share the same roads. They share the same infrastructure. And then Luke says something that I think a lot of us will find valid. The United Kingdom made a really bad deal during Brexit regarding Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland has to basically follow a lot of EU regulations, while the UK no longer has a say in those regulations and no longer receives EU subsidies in Northern Ireland, while also having to comply with EU standards, and suggest a future episode on Northern Ireland, which I think is fascinating. Bully?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. So, and also, in essence, just to stop here, just to have a restroom stop here, or rest stop here, as we call them in the US, this is totally understandable. You have to do all the requirements of the EU, yet you don't get the perceived benefits of being in the EU. It's kind of like having to pay your dues to a YMCA and not ever getting to visit that YMCA.
Yeah, that's not a fun situation to be in.
And I'm sure Brussels is very happy that a couple of Americans are referring to their great experiment as a YMCA.
Yeah.
Secondly, our buddy Luke gives us fascinating commentary in a way that was new to me about the state of automotive culture in the EU overall. And again, this is a conspiracy realist from Amsterdam, a polyglot, as we'll find. So Luke says, the speed limit thing is not such a contentious issue here in the European Union because personal vehicle ownership is not closely associated with freedom. If you live in a city or even a suburb like many Europeans do, personal vehicle ownership has actually become kind of rare, and get this, guys, associated with a lack of freedom.
Huh?
Right. So directly opposite of what many Americans think, right?
But how though?
But how? Luckily, Luke's here for us and says, great question, Matt, says Luke, because owning a car means that it's usually the only option you have available, whereas not owning a car means that you have usually a lot of options, for example, metro, bus, walking, cycle, trains, rental cars, if you wish. The car ownership concept has become a kind of symbol for the lack of freedom with that 20th century car-centric infrastructure forces us into, like we see when we visit U.S. cities. So it goes back to the old philosophical problem of who is the prisoner, right? It depends on which side of the bars you see yourself.
But hold on there, Luke. If you've got a car, does that mean you can't do those other things? You can't also have a bike or walk?
I'm really glad you brought that up. I'm sorry I'm making like a
Gene
Roddenberry, Willy Wonka face. But yes, it's a good question. It is because ostensibly having a car would consign someone to continual financial expenditures, right? Obviously. But then it would not exclude one from utilizing those other resources and just walk to places, right? Or you'll just hop on your bike, you know. Luke continues and says, I personally don't know many people who own a car, and I wouldn't be able to name someone who bought one in the last 5 years in my circle of acquaintances. The only people who have discussed speed limit regulation with me are, unironically, U.S. expatriates. Most of my fellow EU citizens wouldn't even know why to be upset about it. I don't know. I mean, it's a great question because it's a very different culture, right? Like if we were living in a large metro area of the European Union, let me ask you this. Would you guys own a car?
I don't know.
No, I mean, same with like New York City. I mean, it's almost like more trouble than it's worth. You have to house the car. You got to pay for a parking spot. It's just logistically very difficult unless you're needing it to go on a long trip. Just doesn't make any sense for the most part. People can get by with renting a car if they need one for like a short-term use for taking a road trip. But in an urban situation like that has decent public transit, it's just way more trouble and expense than it's worth.
I think my brain, I think my experience might be too bubbled here, guys.
How so?
I can't imagine not having a vehicle. I honestly can't. Just because I've never lived like in a city, you know, in a very densely populated city area, like in an apartment or something where I do feel like everything's walkable or something. Right. I've never had that experience. So to me, if I didn't have a car, I couldn't get groceries unless I, you know, did a series of public transit or something to where I could carry those groceries. I guess I've just, you know, because of my experience, I cannot imagine not owning a vehicle.
There's certainly people that move to the big city and share that perspective and will hold on to their car. Or they feel that it's worth it. Or if you live in certain parts of like Brooklyn, say, you can find street parking around a place that you're renting, but you gotta move it for street cleaning. There's all kinds of extra little things that you have to think about. It can get to a point where you're like, is it worth it? Because even if you're in Brooklyn or any part close to like a metro area like that, you can do your grocery shopping by walking down the street, and you can do it a little at a time. That's why they got all those little bodegas. You know, you don't have to do the big shop. You just kind of shop for what you need when you need it, and just bring it in a sack, you know, up your stairs, and there you go.
A European Lucifer approaches you by your street parking and says, "What are you carrying all those bricks for, Kevin?" It is true that in Western Europe, as Luke says, basically any small, medium, or large town offers great or adequate public transit and has walkable, cyclable neighborhoods, to your point. And if you really need a car, says Luke, there's the opportunity to rent cars, maybe just for an hour or for a few days. And Luke says where they live, public transport providers have an integrated system where you can use buses, trains, ferries, and subways, as well as rental bikes and rental cars should you need one, with one card for all of the things.
Oh, that's cool.
That's super cool. That's not a thing in the United States.
No,
not yet. And Luke says these are, in summation, these are the reasons why the EU speed limit regulation hasn't had a lot of opposition in Western Europe. It doesn't impact as many people because car ownership rates are not that high to begin with, and the safety advantages of speed limit regulation outweigh theoretical disadvantages. Greetings from Amsterdam. Love your show. We're going to call this conspiracy realist Luke, and we're going to, before we get to our closing act, want to give a big shout out to a very Netherlands Holland-esque joke that Luke makes, ending the letter with apologies for grammar mistakes. English is my fourth language.
Ooh,
I'm brushing my shoulders. Can you all see me brushing the shoulders?
Yeah, and it was beautifully written. There were no grammar mistakes, Luke.
There were not. Luke, you did. You nailed it, bud.
You killed it. I said I actually read that out loud to my kid and their mom. I thought that was just a funny thing. Mm-hmm. Very clever. And it probably likely meant to be self-deprecating. I don't think it was like a flex. I think it was genuine.
I don't know, man.
Who knows?
I've hung out in Amsterdam, and that's kind of on vibe with the comedy scene.
Could well be.
Beautiful people. Before we close this evening's listener mail, started a thing a little while back called Letters from Home. Not pertinent news, not necessarily responses to stuff. Just fun. How you doing? A little bit of a prairie home companion. And the torch has been picked up collectively. So, Noel, you found a letter from home that you would like to share, and I think we're all super on board with it.
Just a quick one, and this is one we're going to have to give a nickname because this is an individual that I believe would want his name out there because he's a published author. Matt Ingwelson. And he had this to say. In yesterday's Strange News episode, you wondered, what if absolutely everyone had all their passwords stolen at once? I couldn't resist emailing you to tell you that's the exact setup of my novel, The Nihilisticats, which is a really clever name. The characters also investigate other conspiracies such as whether Wyoming exists and the suspiciously sequential numbering of city streets. I'll paste the description down below. More than happy to send you a copy if that sounds interesting. That does sound interesting. Going to read a quick blast through of this synopsis. Web world has been hacked. The private information of every American posted to servers foreign and domestic. So the government makes a special one-time offer. Start over with the identity of your choosing and get a spiffy new Ameriphone and clean SSN in return. I just thought that was a really cool concept, and it came up organically in our conversation. And Matt, I appreciate you writing in. And the indie reader called this novel Over the Top Fun, the best pop culture novel of 2024. So you can find it on Amazon and anywhere you get ebooks or books of any kind. And really hope that Matt sends us a copy. I'm looking forward to reading it.
And Matt, it's, as you know, I'm sure, dude, it's very important to me to support authors earning creative endeavors. So I have actually already started scouting out a way to order your book. I want to support you and thank you. It's funny how many great authors and musicians we get writing in to say, hey, this thing you all explored is actually something that was on my mind as well. So thank you so much. This helps us know we're moving in the right direction. Speaking of moving, here is a letter from home from someone that we have not spoken with directly, but are very proud of. I want to give a special shout out to our super producer, codenamed Doc Holliday, who looked a bit askance at this name. We're going to hear from an astronaut named Dr. Sean Proctor. That's right, Dr. Proctor. Kind of like, Marshall Brain kind of stuff. So Dr. Proctor is it's a good rhyme, is the first Black woman to pilot a spaceship and the first person, this is a true story, to paint in space, to make art, visual art in the painting medium in space. Awesome, awesome stuff, especially for those of us who, you see people changing the world. And one time I fell asleep trying to put on a pair of pants. So there's a lot of context in that one. I appreciate that look there, Matt. I thought it might be fun to read a little bit of Dr. Proctor's real life Tripadvisor review of living in space. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'll just give you the headings and then we'll pick maybe one or two to read. So we've got location, sleep quality, ambiance, amenities, transportation, cleanliness, food, rooms, views, recreational area, overall experience. If you had to choose one, if we each chose one, what would you want to hear first?
How about recreation? What are we getting up to in space?
Fantastic. Dr. Proctor finds recreational areas in space a 5 out of 5. And folks, yes, 5 is the highest rating in this particular Tripadvisor review. Dr. Proctor says, painting in space was a highlight of my life and easier than I imagined. I'm thankful to my crew for giving me the time and space to be able to complete from scratch, a beautiful water painting of Afro-Gaia, Mother Earth, surrounded by Earthlight under a rising sun and a dragon capsule, referring to dragons in space exploration. The hardest part was keeping myself stable. I was weaving and bobbing as I tried to paint. But still, 5-5. Good vacation, sounds like.
Dude, I want to see that specialized water paint setup.
I was thinking the same thing. It's like when you hear about how using the toilet works.
Well, yeah, you make like a bubble of water and suspend it with those little metal point things.
Dip in or what?
Yeah.
I guess so. Without the special gear, wouldn't you end up with blobs of paint kind of just like floating around, clogging up your instruments?
Yeah. Wouldn't you end up with sort of a non-consensual art project?
Now, that being said, there could be, if you had a specialized room, all those kind of, I don't know, a little bit pretentious painters that suspend themselves in some sort of harness situation and just sort of, drag the paintbrush across the giant canvas or splatter or whatever. What if you did that with zero gravity and were able to kind of like throw paint and have it disperse in a zero gravity situation? That could yield some interesting results.
The shadows of Pollock, right? and Noel, do you have one out of those things we outlined? Do you have one that you want to hear about? A specific one? Again, their location, sleep quality, ambience, amenities, transportation.
Oh, well, I always make my travel arrangements based on ambiance. So.
Yes. Here we go. Ambiance, good news, 5 out of 5. Dr. Proctor says we spent our entire 3 days in space inside the SpaceX Dragon capsule, and the ambiance was serene. There is the constant hum of fans, circulating airflow throughout the cabin, which acts as white noise. Because you can float, the entire volume of the capsule is available to claim as space you can occupy. Sounds pretty cozy, to be honest.
Not bad.
It does. I'm
hearing some ellipses, Matt.
There are. I have an issue sometimes with like certain sine waves, like standing waves with fans like whirring and stuff like that. I've got a mental thing going on with some of that.
Yeah.
And I wonder if astronauts keep specialized hearing protection or something like that reduces certain frequencies when they're up there because of that constant hum.
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess we'll have to get up there. We were going to go on a road trip at some point, but maybe we should just go to space.
Okay. Well, is it clean though?
Nice one, Matt. Yeah, the one thing, spoiler, that is not a 5-5 in Dr. Proctor's Tripadvisor review of a vacation in space is cleanliness, which gets a 4 out of 5. Still a great score. Still a great score. And Dr. Proctor says the following: we did a great job of keeping our capsule tidy. There are storage bins for pretty much everything. The only issue was our water bottles. Each bottle has a tiny Velcro dot that you use to stick to the wall of the capsule, but they get dislodged and they float around, which is such a small issue, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's better than the Mountain Dew bottles that have urine in them floating around, right?
right. Oh, that was you were there. Yeah.
Yep, that's me.
It reminds me because it's such a nice letter from home. It also makes me think of the old joke. Oh God, Noel, you probably saw me do this one live, that there is a worst person of every profession somewhere out there in the world is the world's worst astronaut.
Worst astronaut. Yeah, it's gotta be. I mean, just it would have to be determined based on stats. You know what I mean? Like, and it would probably wouldn't be instantly apparent, and they'd probably still be quite smart and have done very well in school.
Of course.
And in general would be competent at their job. But if you put them side by side, yeah, one of them's going to come up as the worst.
The world's worst. I think the way we joked about it was they're getting the news about the next launch and the crew, and then someone says, and we'll have Neil as mission specialist. And then everybody in the room goes, ugh, Neil? The guy who's always hammered at Applebee's?
Loves those chocolate choo-choos.
It's two for, whatever.
Guys, the website Inverse has a 2016 article titled The 10 Worst Astronauts of All Time.
Mm-hmm,
and they name actual astronauts.
Hey, and I did not write that one. To be clear, I would not in real life disparage the great mission to space.
They put Alan Shepard on there as number 8. Oh my God.
Oof. Well, astronauts, give us your hot takes. We'll keep you anonymous if you wish, knowing that you exist in literal rarefied air. Give me a rim shot there. Thank you, guys.
Sorry.
No, that's perfect. Let's get both of them because that was a horrible joke. Big thanks to Radical Moderate. Big thanks to Julia, to King John, to author Matt Ingwalson, to Charlie, to Dr. Proctor, of course, to everyone who tuned in. We greatly appreciate your time. We'll be back with more explorations past the streetlights, past the edges of the known maps. We can't wait for you to join us. We try to be easy to find online.
Try to find us on the internet, your social media hub of choice, at the handle Conspiracy Stuff, where we exist on Facebook, where their Facebook group, Here's Where It Gets Crazy, YouTube, with video content coming at you on the regular, and XFKA Twitter, on Instagram and TikTok. However, we are Conspiracy Stuff Show.
Be like King John and call 1-833-STDWYTK. When you call in, give yourself a cool nickname and let us know if we can use that name and your message on one of these listener mail episodes. If you got more to say, and can fit 3 minutes, why not instead shoot us a good old-fashioned email? We are
the entities that read every single piece of correspondence we receive. Be well aware, folks, but not scared. We just want you to know that sometimes the void writes back. Quick correction there, Radical Moderate. As you're hearing this, I mentioned your name, but I did not play your voicemail yet. So stay tuned next week. And Conspiracy Realist, you might be a part of next week's program. Conspiracy at iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.